Welcome to Keeping It 100 Coalition Conversation, the official podcast of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Metropolitan Baton Rouge chapter. I'm your host, Shanice Lewis, and today we're highlighting our upcoming event, the Convening, a Domestic Violence Symposium taking place this Saturday, October 26th. It is free to attend, but make sure you register because space is limited. And on our show today, we are discussing civic engagement and political participation, which you do not want to miss. But before we kick off the show, we are going to welcome our beautiful and talented president, Courtney Hunt, to share the opening remarks. Hi, Courtney.
Hi, Shanice. How are you?
Good. So you have some opening remarks for us today.
I do. I'm very excited about this show. I'm very excited about the election process. You know, we love civic engagement here at the 100 Black Women. So I just wanted to open us up and, just talk about how we view the elections and the elections process in our chapter. So first, I want to welcome everybody to Keeping It 100 Coalition Conversations. Tonight, we have some fabulous guests. They're going to talk about voting, and as Shanice mentioned, a little bit about domestic violence. But I wanted to talk about the election season. In this season, I want to make it very clear that the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated, Metropolitan Baton Rouge chapter, has been committed to empowerment and advancing Black women and girls through our leadership development programs, education, health, and economic empowerment, and most importantly, through our advocacy. Our message is clear: your voice and your vote matter. I want to take a moment to emphasize that we are a nonpartisan organization. We do not support or endorse any political candidate. Our mission is rooted in education and empowerment, not in promoting any specific political agenda. We believe that everyone, particularly Black women and girls, should feel empowered to vote their conscience and advocate for their beliefs. Our goal is to equip individuals with the knowledge and tools to make informed decisions at the polls. Voting is not just a right, but a powerful tool for shaping the future of our communities, our cities, and our country. By staying informed, by showing up at the ballot box, and by using our voices, we can drive meaningful change. Today, we want to stand together in unity, knowing that our participation in the electoral process helps ensure that every single one of our voices is heard, and that progress and justice can be achieved for everyone. Let us continue to encourage our families, our neighbors, and our friends to get out there and vote. Just today, I texted about 20 of my friends and told them, let me see those stickers. So we want to do that because when we vote, we advocate for our values, our future, and our community. So Shanice, I know we're going to have a great show. I thank you for being a fabulous and gracious host, and I'm excited to see what November 5th has in store for our country. Thank you.
Well, thank you for those words, President Hunt, and we will keep that in mind as we discuss the political landscape, but we're not endorsing anybody. We just want you to vote, period.
Vote your conscience and vote responsibly. Vote for what makes you happy.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And you guys have a great show.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And so today we have two dynamic guests that are very passionate about politics, to say the least. So I'm going to introduce both of them. Our first guest is Nina S. Hunter. She is the co-chair of the Public Policy Committee of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Metropolitan Baton Rouge chapter. She has 20 years of experience as a licensed attorney in the state of Louisiana. Her 15 years of public service includes serving as Deputy General Counsel and Administrative Law Judge at the Louisiana Division of Administrative Law and a tax policy attorney at the Louisiana Department of Revenue. Attorney Hunter has a legal letter master's in taxation from the Denman School of Law, Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, a law degree from the Southern University Law Center in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Let's welcome Attorney Hunter to the stage.
Woo! Thank you, Sister Lewis. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to a great show.
Awesome. And our second guest this evening, Dr. Melanie Smith-Johnson. Dr. Melanie Smith-Johnson is the Associate Professor of Political Science, Co-Activity Director for Title III Program, and Interim Director for the Jules Limar Prestage Public Policy Polling and Research Center at Southern University and A&M College in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She teaches courses that focus on civic engagement, political participation, local, state, and national politics, educational policy, diversity in curriculum in higher education, and public policy. She has several years of administrative experience in higher education and served as section leader committee for the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges for Southern University and A&M College. She also has over 25 years grant compliance, grant writing, reviewing, and policy development. Her research interest includes Black politics, examining governance and leadership in higher education, particularly at HBCUs, and public policy issues to develop strategies and techniques for effective change. Recently, Dr. Smith-Johnson participated in the 2024 Women in Leadership Conference at Harvard University to deliver a presentation on the continuing role of historically Black colleges and universities in advancing equity in higher education. And we are so excited to have her here today. Let's welcome Dr. Melanie Smith-Johnson to the show.
Hello, everyone. So happy to be here. I'd like to thank the Collegiate 100 Black Women for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to.
Wait, we're not the collegiate now. That's the
okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry about that. That's right. I'm not on campus.
We're the grown women one.
Yes. But anyway, I am so happy to be here. Looking forward to our conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're going to jump right into it because there's so much to cover. So, ladies, tell me, why is voting considered one of the most powerful forms of civic engagement?
Well, I can speak to that. Actually, voting, when you vote, you're voting for the people that actually represent the constituents in your area. So you're really voting for someone to represent you, your values, what you believe in, what you want to see done in the community. And the people that you vote in are usually the people that are the policymakers. They create the policies and the laws that you have to adhere by. And if you don't vote, you really don't have a voice. Because I'll take it for an example, a local election, when you have to vote for a judge. If you get a ticket, you have to go in front of a judge. So that judge actually that you either going to vote for or not will determine your fate on whether or not you go to jail or maybe you have a larger fine. So at the end of the day, voting is very, very important for us to, for citizens to actually adhere to and to go out and vote.
And Nina, you agree with that? Any feedback?
Absolutely. I agree. And I think the only thing I would just add to that, of course, is, in our system of government that we have as a democracy, the vote is the one individual thing that we all have. That is our connection to the system. And I think a lot of times people feel like they're not connected. They don't understand how they really have a choice or how they really don't matter, but that is your link in. That is the piece of power that you have that once, of course, it's put together with a large group of people, you can actually make change. And so it's essential because it's the basic function. It is literally the building block to our system of government. So it's key. It's huge. It's everything.
So for those who may feel like their vote doesn't make a difference, why is it so important to show up and vote, especially in local elections?
Well, as I stated earlier, actually, look, politicians determine our educational structure. They determine the money that's going to be put into education, healthcare. They determine a policy related to the air we breathe, to the food we eat. And so it's so important that people understand that voting is power. And if you don't go to vote, then you really don't have a voice about what happens to you. An example is the Affordable Health Care Act. So a part of the Affordable Health Care Act allows young people to stay on their parents' insurance till they're 25. Well, for the people, which they're trying to dismantle that right now with Project 2025. But if people don't go, if they didn't vote for the person that was in office that actually put together that policy, people wouldn't have that luxury of staying on their parents' insurance until they're 25. So, in other words, what I'm saying is if you don't go vote, then you're leaving the policy and decision-making process to the people who have voted and the powers that be to determine what happens to you on a day-to-day basis. So it's very important that people understand that voting definitely impacts mainly the most underserved, most vulnerable populations of people. And they are usually the people that don't go to vote.
Can you give me another example of a way voting impacts our day-to-day life? You said insurance. Give me another example.
Well, actually, I'll look at, although we're not partisan here, talking about partisanship, but we can talk about COVID-19. We could talk about the Trump administration. Prior to the Trump administration, Barack Obama, when there was N1H1, had a pandemic task force in place. As soon as Trump was elected, because during that time, I think less than 13% of, I know the Black population voted. So when we had Trump in office, he dismantled the COVID-19 pandemic force, and he said COVID was a farce. And many people died because of that, because of who we had in office. And because actually the voting, I know in the Black population was very low. But we were the first affected. We were the first, it showed the disparities. We were the first to have the highest percentage of deaths with Black people. So it definitely impacts your day-to-day life. I don't think anybody that's listening to this podcast was not impacted, or their family members were not impacted by COVID-19.
And Nina, you want to?
Yes, of course. I definitely would like to add, and I think this kind of circles back to the previous question, which is why people sometimes miss the importance of the value of voting, because they're looking so much at the big picture. They look at the big races and they don't really see how that one vote makes a difference. But it is in those local elections, right? It's in the city court judges. It's in the councilman seats. Those are the local, smaller elections that people tend to not pay attention to because it's not a big race, or it's not a big jurisdiction. It's not a big district, or not a big precinct. But actually, those are where the decisions are being made that affect your day-to-day. That city court judge, those judges hear criminal matters. They hear sales tax matters that come from the Department of Revenue. They hear traffic tickets, all those different types of things that affect you day to day, those things that interfere with your ability to come and go. Local elections, of course, a lot of those decisions that have to deal with utilities and regulations that are city regs or even parish regs, those things are local level. And so I think we have a responsibility, organizations like ours and others, to get people to focus on the fact or to see how they really do have an impact. And I think it's our job with conversations like this to push that message. Your one vote does matter, and it does affect day-to-day policy that affects you, your mom, your brothers, and your sisters, and everyone that's driving back and forth on the roads and cities and byways. All of that governed by local election and local races.
And what about local sales tax when you're buying groceries and stuff in Baton Rouge here locally in the grocery store and the stuff so high? Is that national or local?
That's definitely local. Definitely local. Sales tax is on tangible personal property. That's anything that you buy right here in the city of Baton Rouge. When you buy a grocery and when you buy things on Amazon, all those types of things are sales tax revenue for the state of Louisiana or wherever that object or that company is cited. So again, those are the things, and that's why your state representative, those smaller races, not necessarily a congressional race, but all of those races matter because sales taxes, income taxes, franchise taxes, all those things are voted on at the state level in your state representative races or your state senator races. Absolutely.
Now, can you share a success story where a grassroots civic engagement made a significant difference in policy or legislation?
Well, I would definitely say I think that the work that we're doing right here in our organization with the 100 Black Women is a perfect example of that. As you know, we have an event coming up this Saturday, which is our domestic violence convening. This may be the third series, if I'm remembering correctly. It may even be the fourth. But we've been having this conversation annually, talking with policymakers and decision makers about change and intervention that we need in this area. We all know that domestic violence is a major issue. We all know that it directly affects probably more in the Black community because there are high statistics that target Black women and girls, but not just Black women and girls, but definitely higher statistics in those demographics are dying. They're affecting children. They're affecting loved ones. It's affecting all of those, that family unit that's affected by domestic violence. So we've been having this conversation annually, and you'll see it's on the screen. We're meeting with our state senator, Regina Barrow. We're going to have our honorable Judge Michael Guidry there, Captain Dave Mays, Rakia Morris, who is in the DA's office, and Sister Angela Gabrielle, who is a domestic violence survivor, all getting together to talk about the issues and problems and things that we need to do in this community. And as a result of the conversations we've had previously, we now have a domestic violence court, a pilot program that has started at the 19th JDC. So that's a direct example of intervention, policy people getting together, talking about something that's needed in the community and then actually manifesting. And so that program is still in its very early stages, but that's why we're continuing to have this conversation, because we want to find out what we need to do to keep it going. And we need to motivate people to continue to talk about the issues that affect their day-to-day so that we can actually build an intervention to try to address it. And I think this is a perfect example.
Yeah, so make sure you join us Saturday.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about the importance of voting and why you should vote, but let's talk about the consequences of choosing not to vote, both on a personal level and for the broader community.
Well, I think one of the things, and we haven't discussed this, but Nina, you hit on it a little bit with domestic violence, is policing in our community. And if you don't go, usually that's a local issue. And we have had several examples where community policing works in certain states, in certain jurisdictions, but in our state, in our local jurisdictions here, community policing has not been advocated for. And we have right now in the city of Baton Rouge, our crime rate is very high. And so I think it's important that people go out and vote in local elections to put the right people in city council, to put the right people, of course, the right person in the mayoral position, to have conversations about what we will do, because what we're doing right now is obviously not working because crime has increased tremendously. And
I was
so,
scared to drive on the interstate thinking
yeah,
somebody gonna shoot me.
right. So voting right now, I think is so important to do to try to circumvent some, find interventions, find new ways, and you have to have innovative people in office that care. Not saying we don't have them in there now, but we need to do something about it. And if you don't go vote, then your voice can't be heard, and you can't create change. And so that's one of the most important reasons why you should go vote.
And when we have low voter turnout, how does that affect the outcomes of the elections? What kind of policies get passed when fewer people participate in the voting process?
Well, definitely, I think, it just kind of speaks for itself. If you're not voting, then you lose your ability to be a part of the solution. So, and I think a lot of times, it only can be fixed or addressed by us trying to address, change the narrative. A lot of people feel that if I vote, or I'm not going to vote because I don't get to vote for the person that I want, or I don't like the candidate that is running. And it's really not about voting for who you want. It's really about seeing voting as a duty, seeing it as a responsibility, seeing it as something that we are charged with as members of a functional civilized society. And if we get people to think about it that way, then ultimately it's your responsibility to vote. And when you do that, you hurt yourself personally and you hurt society as a whole, and you're not being a part of addressing the issues as they occur. So policy is made, the person that's making those policies, they're going to be catering to the people that voted, and they're not going to be catering to you. And if you don't speak up, then it's kind of hard to say you have concerns about issues or decisions or policies or votes that they make because you didn't go to the polls and participate in the process.
Yes, and I want to shift the conversation to polling because Dr. Johnson, that's one of the things you are the director of the program at Southern. So what role does political polling play in shaping public opinion and political campaigns?
Okay, that's a great question. Actually, polling is so important, actually, prior to an election or even prior to a candidate determining if they should run for office or in an election. But polls can tell a candidate, if you run a randomized poll, it can tell a candidate a lot about what the community needs are. And from that, they can actually develop a campaign strategy, a campaign platform to tell people in the community what they plan to do to fix some of the issues that plague that community and where they want to see change. So it's very important to poll, but you have to be you have to watch with polls, look at the demographics of who's polling who. You have to look at the think tank or polling center that's actually carrying out the poll. But I think it's very important for a candidate to keep their pulse on the voters' positions as it relates to what they want to see in their community, and if they've even determined who they want to vote for. And it allows a candidate to find out, look, if I poll and I see many people in the 70805 community said they're not going to vote, then I know to go canvass that area. If I see that people between the ages of 18 and 25 have decided they're undecided, I know that I need to come up with a strategy in order to capture that market. So polling is so important for a political a person that's campaigning.
Now, can you explain how political polls are conducted? Because if I put a post on Facebook and I get 100 likes and comments, is that my non-official poll? Can I text people? Like, what makes it a real legitimate poll? Because I think some of these polls be lying.
Yes. So first of all, you need to have a data set. And the data set needs to be of the people in whatever area, wherever you're running. And you do a randomized poll because you don't want any bias in that poll. And you poll them. You can either send them emails or text messages, and you use a sample. You would use a sample size from the population to determine what the poll numbers will look like. And you always have to keep in mind that there's going to be a 5% margin for error, right? Because everyone that may answer the question may not give you the right answer. So it's a statistical procedure with polling. But as I said before, you also have to look at who's conducting the poll, because you can make a poll, the numbers come out however you want to, depending on what you're trying to find out.
And some people use polls to manipulate.
Actually, yes. And that's why many people say, I don't like polls. They don't want to look at polls anymore. They say polls don't determine whether or not the candidate is going to win or not. But they are pretty close. We did a poll at the Center for a County Commissioner in Fort Bend County. We did a preliminary poll, and we were able to tell him how to canvass by zip code, by age, give him a campaign strategy. Then our secondary poll we told him he would win by 60%. We were dead on. He won by 60%.
So how do you know a poll is credible?
Depends on the actually how you're conducting it, what software you're using, and the people that are conducting the poll, whether or not they know what they're doing actually. It is a statistical procedure. And it's not anything that's, and as I said, it's randomized. So you definitely have to have experience and knowledge in polling in order to conduct a credible poll that's valid and credible.
Yep, I agree. A representative sample, a sample that is representative of the area or the district that you're trying to poll. I think that's key. I agree 100% with Dr.
But okay, we need to move on. But how do you know a poll is credible? Because I think the answer is really you don't. Because the people with the right machines or software still could be lying.
No, it's actually not going. That will never happen. You see, when you send out the polls, you're sending them out. You remember I told you have a data set. So you're sending that poll out to people who live in that community or that state. And so there's no way that you can come back and just change the numbers completely.
You don't think nobody would do that?
They're going to be generated.
Okay.
Right. So it's not going to be where you just poll women, or you just poll men, or you just poll Democrats, or you just poll Republicans. And that's the issue, right? Or that's the question where you can get a distorted result, is if you're not representative or you don't have a legitimate sample. But if you do a legitimate sample of whatever area or that district or precinct, then the polling is reliable because you're asking the people who live in that community. And it is definitely a positive tool, especially if you're trying to make data-driven decisions, because you're asking the people who live in those areas about the things that are important to them or their concerns. Now, of course, the danger is when there is a small population and it's not representative, and then it's presented to a large group, like that was the poll of a large group, when it really was just a very small population. Then that's the danger. That's when people take a poll and try to, present it to an uninformed audience who doesn't know, well, who did you really ask, or who really conducted this poll? And that's how you get the distortions or the data that's just not reliable. But generally, you're asking the public their opinion, and you're not going to get any more credible response than what they choose. And no one's going to change their response unless it's just a fraudulent, they just.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, when I see poll results on Facebook, on the news, I don't see all the time who conducted it. I don't see what equipment they use. I don't see what program they use. So I don't know those details to know if it's credible or not. Like if I post on Facebook, I did a poll and 100% of the people say Shanice should be the next mayor. How you know I'm not credible?
Well, actually, you should, whoever puts that poll out, they should tell that a name should be associated with it.
Okay.
They should cite who conducted that poll, and they should cite the demographics of that poll. And so you actually, that if it's credible and reliable, the integrity of that poll, they should give you that information. This poll was conducted by the Limar Prestige Public Policy Polling and Research Center. The demographics from this poll included this many people. A random sample was done to da 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 da. So if you don't see all of that information, then you need to question, because oftentimes I always question if I see polls, what think tank ran this poll? But they can be manipulated. They can be manipulated, but they're based on the data set that you have and the information that you receive, that you get back.
Okay, well, I want to move on, but that's good information. So now I know what to look for. So you done taught me something today. So let's move on to the younger generation. How can we encourage the younger generation to get involved in politics and civic activities?
Well, I work as a professor at Southern. I teach from undergrads all the way to PhD candidates, students. And what I found with the younger generation is that you have to connect them and show them how voting impacts them. And if you can show them how voting impacts them, then they'll be more likely to want to be engaged. Oftentimes, a lot of my students have this myth. This is myth on social media that electoral college votes in the president, so our vote doesn't count anyway. So we're not going to vote. But once you explain to them how this works and how their vote does count, and then they become more interested in it. But the main thing is to connect the dots to show them what actually their tuition cost. How their tuition cost is impacted by who's the governor of that state, particularly if you live in a performance-based funding formula state where public state funded schools are funded by the state. So if you have a Republican governor that is not going to worry about public state funding universities actually receiving their land grant money that they owe them, their tuition costs are going to go up. And so when they see, oh, my tuition costs are going to go up, then it's affecting me in my pocket.
Yep.
And then they start to pay attention. But you have to actually teach them that. And a lot of them, social media has really gotten into their head. There's a lot of things they've seen and heard on social media that's not true. But it's so important that we involve our youth and our young people with the process and show them how important it is for them to vote. It really is.
Nina, you
I
want
agree.
to
I agree 100%. They need to make the connection, and that's our charge. So many times, if they don't see why voting is going to change or affect their day to day, it's not going to mean anything to them. The older generation, they know about the struggles. They know about the people that lost their lives. A lot of them marched. I still know, family members and close friends. My dad marched, did voter registration drives, drug me and my siblings off to them. We literally marched in the streets of some of the cities here in the state of Louisiana. But the younger generation, they don't have that connection. But if you tell them, hey, if you vote for this person, your tuition gonna go down. If we can get a clean line, like something that simple that they can understand, that's all they need. But that's our job. We have to be able to make that connect for the young people. And young people that I've talked to in their 20s and their 30s, they don't see why it matters. And I think that's our charge.
Now, you both, use tuition as an example, but what about young people that are not in school? They're in the streets. tuition, they not going to school, so tuition don't make or break nothing for them. How do we get the young people in the streets to care about voting?
Well, actually, let me just say this. Let's go back to crime. Let's look at juvenile delinquency. Let's look at training programs and opportunities for youth, after school programs. Let's look at what's happening in their neighborhoods. Let's look on the black on black crime in communities. Actually, I think it's important though in high school. And actually we talked about this in our department, that we educate our youth really early about the importance of being civically engaged, and get them involved in organizations so they can understand how they can be change agents and change some of the things that they see in their communities that they don't like, and how they have the opportunity to do that through voting. And so I think it's important. One of the major things is educating our youth early about the importance of civic engagement. And I think they have a general, they have civics. I had civics. And so when you're taking that, that course, they may need to look at restructuring how they're teaching that course. But I think it's very important that young people get involved really, really early. And if you can show them how, by being engaged civically, somebody who was on the street got involved politically, and maybe I just say was a drug dealer, but by being civically engaged, learned about a training program to show them how to sell cannabis and make money legally, then guess what? Then you capture their attention. But I think just the schools, it starts with just the education, early education.
Now, you mentioned how social media is a place where a lot of misinformation gets put out. But how do you think social media can play a role in mobilizing younger voters and keep them informed? Like today, we're on social media talking.
Absolutely. I think social media is it. That's the wave of the future. So if you are trying to connect with that young generation, that's where they're going to be. And the thing about technology, which is really pretty amazing, is everybody has a phone. Everybody has a source of information and the ability to communicate with someone else, and it's in their hand. And so it is a remarkable tool. I think, again, the charge for us is to use it in such a way where we can get education out and they're receiving it. Now, of course, the problem with social media, as it is with anything, is too much information from everywhere, right? Where you don't know what's real and you don't know what's credible. You don't know what's coming from a reliable source. So we still have a responsibility as leaders and change agents to create places where people can go online and access credible information and resourceful information. And I think another tool that we have that I think we can benefit more from is, just like you mentioned, we may have a little bit more effectiveness when you're getting the message out among students, right? Because they're in a learning environment. They may be a little bit more adapt to receiving information and acting from it. But young people communicate with young people. So a lot of times you need a young person to talk to another young person to get the message out. They may not want to hear the message from me, or they may not want to hear the message from Dr. Johnson. But using young people who are willing, peer influence, to talk to people and share information, I think that's the avenue that we have, and that's what we can use social media to do.
So we are going to start wrapping up this conversation and try and wrap it up and give some action items. So what advice would you give to someone who feels disconnected from politics or doesn't know where to start when it comes to getting involved?
I think one of the, go ahead.
That's a good question. That's because it really can start a lot of places. But I think number one is just ask someone, have a conversation. That is the most simple thing that you can do. And just thinking about it, just engaging yourself or saying, hey, you know what can I do today that will be a way that I can benefit my community? And either that could be reaching out to, or just figuring out who my elected official is. A lot of people don't even know who represents them in their precincts and in their districts and areas. So if one thing you want to do today, find out who that person is. Because during that process, you may realize you know the person, or the person knows somebody that you know, and you have a greater connection than you realize. And just having a conversation. And of course, don't sleep on the fact that election day is right around the corner. That's probably the number one action item, right? If you have not, early voting is going on as we speak. Taking someone to the polls. I mean, that is probably take somebody with you when you go vote. I don't know what else more we could do in this community than bring someone. And it wouldn't cost you any extra money. It wouldn't cost you any extra time, but to bring someone to go with you.
And how can our viewers get involved in their own communities and make a difference, no matter how small it is?
Again, same thing. You know, find out who those connections are. As we mentioned earlier, you know, there are local city court judges, there are council people, there are constables. These are local positions. People that you can access that can start with connecting you and giving you opportunities, attending the actual community meetings that are happening in your area. Those signs are up all over the place, and we drive by them, we ignore them. Make it an effort to just say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna go to the next community meeting in my area, and I'm gonna find out about what's going on in my community, and I'm gonna speak up about it. Even if you don't get your way, speak up about it. And I think we just need people being comfortable that the win is having the conversation and showing up in the room and being a part of the conversations when they're happening. So many times we think we're just going to go, you're going to walk in that room, you're going to walk out with what you wanted, but it doesn't happen that way. Progress takes time. So we got to start somewhere.
And we do want to point out that early voting has started. It started October 18th and it will go to the 29th. Can you all tell me what's the significance of early voting? Because I always vote on election day. Why is it so important to vote early?
Well, actually, early voting, especially for elderly people, the lines usually are not as long. It allows you to, plan. Usually on election day, some people are working and they may have precinct changes, and they only have a certain window of time that they can go and vote. And so it allows people to have more a window time to go and vote. So and it helps, actually, to me. I just think it allows you at your leisure to go and vote. It's so important because on voting day, particularly for presidential elections, the lines are going to be extremely long. And if you have an elderly parent that you're trying to get to the polls during the weekdays, during the day, allows people to go out and vote so their voice can be heard. It is so important, though, as I have this window to talk about it. If you don't go early vote, to go vote on November 5th. But early voting, actually, as I said, it actually opens up a good window of time for people to go and vote.
So you're saying for my bad back, it's best for me to go early vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe I'll early vote for the first time. You might encourage me.
Because the lines are already long, one, and you never know what's going to happen on election day. You might get pulled away. You might have some type of family emergency. All different types of things can come up. So you don't want to just be lock yourself into that small window of time to actually get there and do something that's very important. You can schedule it, you can plan for it, and you can say, today I'm going as soon as I get off work.
And someone in the comments, our public policy chair, Danielle, absentee voting is also an option for those with mobility and transportation problems. But I think it's too late to sign up for that now, huh? You already had to have
It
signed
is.
up for that.
It is. Yes, it is.
But it's no excuse not to vote.
Absolutely.
So, thank you, ladies, for being on the show today. This was a very informative discussion. I learned some stuff myself, and I definitely hope we encourage some people to get out and vote.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. And everybody that is watching, don't forget that we are having an event this weekend for domestic violence awareness. This is a free event, and we want to see you in the place. This is just one of the initiatives that 100 Black women have in the community to support Black women. This is a free event. All you have to do is register. And I'm going to put the registration link on the screen. It is limited space, so you must register to attend. So I hope to see you there Saturday. And if you want more information about our organization, visit our website at ncbwmetrobr.org. There, you can scroll down to the bottom of the website and join our email list and get a weekly email from us with all our activities and initiatives we have coming up. I want to thank my guest this evening, President Courtney Hunt, Attorney Nina S. Hunter, and Dr. Melanie Smith-Johnson for being my guests and for all of the phenomenal work you're doing in the community. Also, if you want to support the chapter, you can always give us a donation through the website by clicking the donate tab on the menu. I've been your host this evening, Shanice Lewis, on behalf of the Metropolitan Baton Rouge chapter and President Courtney Hunt. Thank you for tuning in to Keeping It 100 Coalition Conversations. And until next time, be blessed.